Okay, so you should all now be seeing my monitor and our introductory slides. So today's webinar is relating to managing pricing and margins in MYOB Exo. Pricing and margins has an impact throughout many parts of the system. So obviously in Exo Business or Exo Finance, pricing and margin affects has an impact on your stock items and in particular the margin that you're going to report on and earn in your financial systems from your quotes, sales orders, customer invoices. Obviously the pricing automatically flows through to things like point of sale and CRM and Exo on the go and also jobs. So we'll try to cover off those key aspects as we go through the webinar. So I'm going to cover how you can set target margins and then how you can manage the pricing to achieve those target margins by way of price levels, price formulas, price policies, and pricing on jobs. Then I'll take you through how to quickly update cell pricing, as price update utility, and also how you can update via, via Excel. And then we'll look at the different reporting options you have in margin, whether it's by product or by category of product or by customer, and a couple of options on how to find and deal with items that your margin is too low. And time permitting, we'll look at setting up specials or clearances and just quickly look at Momentum's price update utility that has a few more options than the standard available Exo. Okay. So you all should be seeing MYOB Exo Business now on your screen. And firstly, I want to look at target margins. So target margins are most simply managed by setting a target margin at your stock group level. So for an administrator user, the utilities option is normally available, and under that we have stock utilities and set up stock groups. Every stock group can have an expected margin. It can also have an allowable margin variance, so you might say plus or minus 5% is acceptable. So you can have different margins for different stock groups and different margin tolerances. So what that does is just give you something that you can track or report against in terms of whether you're achieving the margin that you would like to get on each of those product categories. How that flows through to the individual items is obviously every item belongs to a stock group. And you can filter your product search accordingly. So because the system knows that this item belongs to that stock group and it knows what the target margin is for that stock group, then we can easily report on whether that's being achieved or not. Every item has cost and sell prices, and there's various ways of dealing with sell prices to achieve the right outcome for the different customers or categories of product. So these are some, I guess, underutilized areas of Exo. Firstly, the sell price levels that you see here, you can manage you can call them something that is meaningful to your business rather than level 7, 8, 9 or A, B, C, D. So you can call them retail, trade, etc. And that just makes things a little more logical for people that use the system. And how you do that is, again, in your utilities, in the setup price levels screen. So price levels have a name, a currency, and optionally they can have what's called the price SQL, which is a formula. So let's have a look at an example of that one, where we've got one called Cost Plus. So you can make that formula. In this example, we're saying it's sell price. Let's say it's sell price 1 times 0.8. So trade price is a 20% discount off sell price 1. Sell price 1 being the retail or list price. So it's fairly common for one of the price levels to be your base or standard or list price. And then other price levels can be discounts off that or markups on cost. And that markup on cost could be based on average cost, last cost, or standard cost. What that does is when we're looking at a stock item, whenever you make a change in a configuration option like that, you should always refresh your settings for that change to take effect. Takes a few seconds, depending on how many dashboards and things you have. So let's go back and look at an item. So these prices can be displayed in what's called a sell price formulation. And the sell price formulation looks at your current sell price, the currency for that sell price level, exchange rates that you might have, what the calculated margin is, and that can be based on the different cost levels. You can see that the target margin we set on the stock group is showing in the sell price formulation screen. So you can then see what where your price levels are against that target margin. Those can then be adjusted as need be, and that will cause these price levels to be updated to the new price you choose. Okay, so for example, if we want to update any of these prices, you can do that. So that's a way of updating sales price. Apologies for that. That was just some background noise from one of our call-ins. So that's a basic way of looking at margins and sell price formulation for an individual item or one at a time. which wouldn't be how you would go about updating your whole price file, but it is a very useful way of handling individual pricing when you come across it. You probably already know that customers get set to a price level, and leaving aside any price policies, and we'll come to that shortly, that is the price level that they will be assigned on any quote, sales order, invoice, job, point of sale transaction for any product. So there's a relationship between the sell price level on the item and the normal price for that customer. When it comes to updating prices more globally, or looking at sales and margin, there are some standard reports you can look at. Sales Analysis Designer is a useful one to use because it can show you for a selected period or a date range, I might say last month, by stock group and by product with margin. Sorry, let me just preview that one rather than print it. So broken down by the stock groups or categories that we looked at, what sales of each item have occurred with their costs, sale cost, GP dollars and GP percent. So that's an easy way to look at, obviously, margin at a stock group level. If you don't want to look at individual items, you can take that grouping out. Give you a much more concatenated report with how margin for each of those stock groups. Equally, it's easy to flip that and say, let's look at it by customer and then by stock group. And still show cost and margin. And you would have your individual customers and then your margin for each stock group by customer. So that can be a good starting point for analysing things that may be high or low, and then drill into that individual stock group, if it's low in particular, to look at the detail as to why. So for example, if we thought all car parts, our margin for tools, that's looking very low. Let's have a look at the individual products. You can very easily filter the report, so we only report on all car parts. We don't need the account name anymore. We just want the products, actually. So let's just go straight to product. And we will also add another condition. So we're only Okay, so in this case, there's only one product that's been sold at that margin. You now know what the problematic product is and can go and adjust the pricing so future sales are at the right margin. So that's a way of getting to that level of detail from a reporting perspective. I'll show you another option, which is Exo Analytics. So Analytics is Exo's inbuilt dashboard reporting tool. So once it launches and refreshes its standard dashboards, then you can start to look at some detail. So we can look at top 10 customers by margin. These are all called what's called a collateral widget. And these can be products by margin, customers by margin, etc. Sales by month. But what you can do is look at the invoice list on the next tab and say, let's look at the month of April. This could be filtered for a branch, a salesperson, and you'll see every invoice that's been produced and the total margin on that invoice. Okay, something that's low, you can then drill into and look at the individual products that were on that item, on that transaction. So it's a good way, particularly to look at what sales people are doing in terms of negotiating pricing or having transactions go through at, you know, an unexpected margin, high or low. And as I said, that can be based on a branch, a salesperson, or a account group, which is a group of customers. Okay, so I'll move on to that from that to some options around updating pricing or managing pricing more globally for lots of items at the same time. So there's a few options. Exo has, under utilities, stock utilities, a price update utility, and a price change scheduler. The price update utility allows you to do things pretty much on the fly using a few basic calculations. So let's say we want to update our trade A price. So you have the formula is basically set something to recalculate based on a formula using other fields. So we could say we want to set our trade A price to be last cost, average cost, standard cost, or supplier cost, markup. Or we could make it a discount of one of the other sell price levels, so you can do either. So let's say it's last cost, and we want a 50% markup on costs, so 1.5 times. And that can be for all stock groups or a selected stock group. And it can be for all items for all suppliers, or it could be for one supplier. So that example might be supplier A has just told you there's a 5% cost increase, so you're now going to apply a 5% sell increase. So you could pick a supplier, which means it's only going to update the products that you buy from that supplier. You can then round it to the nearest cent or 5 cents. When you hit update, it basically does it. So the I guess the caveat with using the price update utility is once you hit go, it's applied the change in your system, so you don't get a preview or a reverse option. But what it's showing you is the latest cost, which is what you've chosen, and then your new calculated price for the trade A price level based on the markup you have selected. So it's a very quick, effective way of updating pricing on stock groups. Everything can be a discount on another price list, a markup on a cost, and you can use stock groups or different ways for different suppliers. So it's quite rapid and effective. If you've not used it before, I'd suggest you have a bit of a play in your test system, and most of you do that using our easy maintenance utility, update live into test, and then run a few updates there and make sure that you get the end result that you want. The second option is the price change scheduler, which does give you the ability to, I guess, make a worksheet, if you like, of the price changes that you're intending to make. So to create that worksheet, you can select your similar options as to what the criteria you're using to select the products, all the electrical, and all the items against that. So let's say we want active products. We want to make this change next week. It's the trade A or the trade B price we're updating. And it's all the products in the system. So that returns your edit list for that price level. And you have the ability to manually put in a price or put in a price change formula. I think I've updated that on the go. But that allows you to basically pre-populate the changes you're going to make and then execute the update process on the date you've originally nominated to update the prices. So you can see in this case we had a number of pre-scheduled items, and the prices only get applied when you run the scheduled update. The next option I'll show you is updating via Excel, because one way or another, it's pretty common for people to be analyzing some stuff in Excel. So Exo has a feature called a quick insert template, and let me show you how you access that. So if you're an administrator user and you've got this utilities option, you should have Exo Business Essentials Configurator. Which is a tool we use most of the time to configure different options in Exo. But there's some tools there that you can use yourself, provided it's done with care, of course, and quick insert. So on the Utilities tab, on the left-hand side, you have Quick Insert, Tab Sheet, Templates, and Utilities. So we're using Templates. You can click New, give it a name, and you select the table in the system that you're looking to put data into. So I've created one called stock price import. So it's getting its information out of and into the stock items table. So stock underscore items is where the master file information for your products is. And every field on the right-hand side is what's in the database. You don't necessarily need to know what they all do. You can select just the ones you want. So I've selected the absolute minimum, stock code, description, and 10 different sell prices. That means that if I update that information, I can import it straight back in from my spreadsheet. Let's have a look at how that works in the utility. We've got stock price import. Stock price import shows you the data in your current system as it is now with those sell prices. So you can easily copy that to your clipboard. Put it in an Excel spreadsheet. And I'll say in doing this that we could have exported that including the cost information and then put some formulas into, recalculate the sell prices based on a markup or margin. This is just a very basic example. So anything you want to update, you obviously can using formulas. You save your quick insert templates in the folder where Exo Business is installed in the QI templates folder. Now what I'm going to do, just to make this fast, is only re-import the ones I updated. And I'm just going to save it as a CSV. So in the template, when you set your template up, you nominate what is the file you're going to be updating. Not quite put mine in exactly the right place, so let me do that. And we're ticking the option to say we're updating existing records. So through a quick insert, you can import new records as well as update existing records. So if we go stock price update, It will return all the data in the table you've selected. When you click the Data tab, it will then read your spreadsheet. And you can already see it's updated the items that I've updated in my spreadsheet, $225 for that one, and I put in 2 or 3 prices for that one. When you save it, it updates the data. If we go back to Exo Business and refresh, the FLO one now reflects the prices I imported. So you can see that exporting to Excel and importing back in with a little bit of practice is quite an effective way of doing it also. If you want to include additional information in what you put into Excel, that can be done by way of a report or a widget. So I've created a widget which gives me extra information like the stock group for each product that I want to export. I still need the product code. I want to know whether it's a lookup item or a stock item, and I want the cost as well as the sell information. So that's been done by what's called a widget, and I can equally copy and paste that to Excel, use formulas to update pricing based on cost, margin, markup, and then I copy that into my import spreadsheet and import it back in is quite an effective way of doing it. Another way to look at target margin versus actual is the use of dashboards in Exo. So this is called a pivot widget. And we've done this pivot widget to show the different stock groups, their target margin, and the actual margin for each month in a dashboard. If you click on a row, let's look at, say, exhaust, and then go to the details grid, it shows you the item sales, quantity, cost, total, margin, and the date those sales occurred, and the margin variance. You can also look at it in a chart. So the pivot chart returns graphical results for the row you've selected in the pivot grid, and the data mining chart shows the results for the whole dashboard. So it's one of the good features in Exo's dashboards and reports. You've got the Clarity Report Designer, Sales Analysis Designer, and dashboards or widgets to return particular information that you want. One of the good things about pivot widgets is you can add or remove items from the pivot the same way as you can when you're doing a pivot in Excel. So if I can take the sales and cost out and just have target versus actual margin, I can say what months I do or don't want to see, down to the stock groups I do or don't want to see. Okay, I'm just going to jump back to my schedule. So we've looked at price levels, price formulas. We haven't looked at price policies. So we'll touch on price policies because that's where you get considerably more flexibility around maintaining pricing. So leaving aside items and item groups and target margins, those relate to products across the board and stock groups across the board. If you want to have specific pricing for specific customers or groups of customers, then you're using price policies. You can have as many price policies in the system as you like, and a price policy can be set to run for a specific date range. It can be set to be applied to one or more selected customers by choosing those customers from the search screen. Or it can be set to a whole group of customers called price policy groups. So you can put customers into groups and you can have as many price policy groups as you like. We'll come back to that, sorry. And then the pricing rules that you apply can apply to any individual item or any group of items based on its stock group. So let's have a look at starting one from scratch. We're going to make this a new policy. We want it to start on the 1st of June, and I really want it to go for 12 months, so let's expire it on the 31st of May 18. The pricing rules give the ability to select an individual stock code or the whole stock group. So let's look at both examples. We're doing steering. Because we've set the expected margin for that stock group, we see what that is. So if we're using the stock group, you need to give some thought to it, because what this is really saying is all the items belonging to the stock group are going to be affected by this price rule. So you can say we're going to give a 5% discount on all the products in that stock group for the date range we selected. Alternatively, you can say you probably wouldn't use a substitute price, because a substitute price is a fixed amount and different products in this stock group are likely to have different prices. Substitute price is more commonly used when you choose an individual stock code. What you might do as alternative to a discount is say, right, for trade A, for this stock group, we're actually going to give them the cost plus price for these products. Let's start with a discount. Now, we could add an individual customer, or we can add a group of customers. It looks like my search screen is not working. So price policy groups. Fields you can put against the customer to put them in a group. Basically, pretty straightforward. So let's have a look at what that does. So it's this price, and it applies to trade customers. Let me just do one more thing. We'll add another price rule. And we'll say for the same stock group, we're going to give a 7% discount, but we're going to do it if the customer orders 10 or more. So that's effectively break pricing. A customer, let's say DNC panel beaters, they have a price policy group, and it's important not to confuse that with their primary or secondary group, but you can make them the same. So we've got primary group of trade retail 5. But it's the price policy group on the discounts prices tab here that actually attaches it to the price policy. So you can see, because this customer is in the trade price policy group, that price policy we just created is affecting this customer. Now I'm just going to go back to that price policy and prove it works. And I'll do that by changing the start date to a date earlier than today. It will prompt me to update all the price policies in that policy, which it does. So let's do an order for this customer, which you can do straight from the customer's card file. I'm just going to take them off stop credit so I can complete my example. And we're going to look for a product that's in the steering stock group. And I'm going to order 15 of that and 1 of that. Okay, and what you'll see is as it's added those products in, it's kicked in my 7% discount because I've ordered 15, and it's kicked in my 5% discount because I've ordered 1. So those are both items in the steering group that are affected by the price policy. So with some effort, it completely eliminates the need to have manual price lists for different customers or different category of products. You just set up your price policies and they work. They'll automatically stop on expiry date. A couple of other options with price policies. You can copy an existing price policy and then change it. And you can also do replacement of price policies. The way Exo works is it's possible, for example, to have the same product in multiple price policies at the same time that affect the same customer. So because you might have a price policy running for a special or a clearance, and you also might have a standard pricing price policy. So Exo will automatically choose the lowest price that it finds in any of those active price policies for those products for those customers. Unless you tick a price policy as being fixed, in which case Exo will choose this price policy, even if the price from this price policy is higher than one of the other ones you've got current. So you've got a lot of flexibility to make sure that the pricing that gets applied to different customers or groups of customers is what you want it to be. You would use a price policy for a special or a clearance, because the good thing about specials or clearances is start-finish dates. So you can set a price policy to run for 1 day, 2 days, a week, whatever, and obviously you can determine what products or categories it applies to and what customers or groups of customers it applies to. So if you are doing contract pricing for customers, then you tend to use the accounts tab and add 1 customer or 2 customers. If you're doing a special and you want all customers receive it, then you would normally be putting the price policy groups in here and just adding the price policy groups, because there's normally a lot less of those. So by adding my 3 price policy groups, that effectively means all customers are getting the Easter special. It's a lot quicker and easier than adding every customer to this tab. So a price policy will work and affect any transaction in the system, be it a sales order, quote, a lay-by or a standing order. It will affect if you don't do an order at all, you just do an invoice. It will also work if you're using CRM and you're creating an opportunity in the CRM. And it will work if you're processing transactions through point of sale. I'll also touch on pricing and margins from a job perspective. So not everybody at the webinar uses job costing, so I'll just touch on that aspect quickly. Okay, so we're starting Exo job costing. For those who are not familiar with it, it'll just give you a quick eye-opener as to what it does. But job costing is all about managing any job that you do for a customer and take that from quote through to completion, tracking labour, materials, subcontractors as you go. We use our same panel beat as customer, so the account is the customer or debtor that this job is being done for. And the items in the quote tab is effectively what you add in to build up the quote relating to labour or materials that you're doing. So if we choose the same items that we put in the quote of our sales order, we can see that the discount has automatically been applied. And the job costing quote screen, like the CRM quote screen, has some additional fields to show markup and margin on every line, as well as markup or margin on the whole quote or job. So I change this to 12, the discount changes to 7. So price policies automatically work in job costing. It's actually configurable to turn on or off. And that pricing would be applied not only to the quote, but any transaction that gets entered to this job, whether that's a timesheet, because you can have price policies that affect the labour codes, or a issue of stock or a purchase. You can take it one step further and actually have a price policy that only relates to one job, and you simply do that by adding the job number. Let's make sure I've got the job number. It was back out of here. 2178. The only thing you do differently is when you add items or categories. So let's say we've got a category for labour. We can say all the labour is being charged out at $1.50 an hour. Sorry, I missed the important step that I was going to tell you about, and that is that the job I think it's 2178. I need to save my job. So that you just nominate the job on the price rule in the price policy. So that allows you to create a price policy for the same customer but for different jobs. So instead of having a customer on a price level or a customer with a price policy, you might be doing different jobs at different pricing for the same customer. It's a little bit unusual, but it does happen. So that's just a little bit about managing pricing specifically for jobs. It's possible to automatically convert a job quote into a price policy, so you don't have to go through all of those steps that I did in that example. And that's a customization that we can do for you. Okay, so just quickly back to our agenda. So we've talked about price levels, formulas, price policies, and job pricing, price update utility, updating from Excel, reporting, finding and fixing low margins, and setting up specials or clearances. I also want to touch on a couple of prompts or alerts that you can do. So let's quickly look at that, and then we're just about done. So back to my demo server. In the configuration module, under profiles, Exo can be set to prompt a user for certain things. So there's an option to say, enforce a sale price review when the cost price has changed. Now that means if you want the person who's entering receipts against purchase orders to be able to update your sell pricing, and not everybody does, so that's why it's an optional profile, then the system will pop up a screen anytime you do a receival of goods, and if the cost has changed on that receipt compared to the previous cost, it will prompt you to say, well, it looks like you need to change your sell prices, and this is what I think it should be. So that option is a user profile, so it can be turned on just for the person who does that step, or it can be turned off completely because not all businesses have the person doing that step updating sell prices, but it is an option. Another option is to have a sales price entry exception warning, and that's also a user profile. And that basically means that if the person entering a sales order or a quote or an invoice enters an item, there can be no warnings. And then you have two alternative warnings. One is you're trying to sell this product below cost, and the other is you're attempting to sell this product outside the product group guideline. The product group guideline being the expected or target margin and the allowed variance for that stock group. Okay? So there are two options you can have to manage sell prices and manage margins. And then the third, which is probably more powerful again, is business alerts. Because those options are prompts, but they're not necessarily enforced. They will warn the person you're selling something outside the guidelines, but they won't stop them. A business alert can. So, for example, a business alert can say you are trying to sell this product at a higher discount than you should, and these alerts are configurable as to what they are. The good thing about alerts is they can be a warning, or they can actually block the user from doing it, which means that they won't be able to save that quote or job or sales order or opportunity until they resolve what it is that they need to resolve. So Exo alerts are the best way of preventing the wrong price or too low a price or too high a price being given. And the good thing about alerts is they can be applied to a sales order, an opportunity, a job quote, a customer invoice. So you can set rules that people can't breach if you want. And the good thing about alerts is they don't necessarily need to apply to everybody. You can tick, so for example, the sales manager may be able to give a higher discount or a lower price, but a salesperson or a junior salesperson may not. So if you're looking to use alerts to really take better control of what's happening on a transactional basis, we can help you with that. Okay, so hopefully you found that informative. You can see that there's quite a lot of options in Exo for dealing with margins, price levels, whether they be across the board pricing or for individual customers or groups of customers. So hope you find that useful and you're able to apply it in your business or organization. If you have any questions, stay on the line and fire away. Otherwise, thanks for joining us today. Okay, it doesn't seem like there's any questions, so we will end the session now. Our next session in 2 weeks will be relating to end of financial year processes to do in Exo. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you all.